I graduated college in 1986, and my first job out of college, I'm working at a little radio station in Galax, Virginia. And they have wrestling. They're right outside of Galax, like every other month maybe, like 6 times a year. And it was a promotion that was out of Salem, Virginia, which is right next door to Roanoke, Virginia. And when they came up to run these shows right outside of Galax, they used one of our DJs at the radio station as their ring announcer. And there were a brother tag team who were cops in Galax, who were a tag team who wrestled for this promotion. So they would come down to the radio station and they would cut promos that we would use to advertise the matches there in Galax. They'd run ads on their radio station. So I knew them, and one day they were down to cut a commercial, and the ring announcer slash morning DJ, I was the midday guy, he just said to them one day, hey, Johnny likes wrestling, Johnny played sports in high school, all that kind of shit, Why don't you ask him if he'd like to be a wrestler? And I've been a wrestling fan since, 4 or 5 years old. I went to a ton of live shows in North Carolina in the 70s, the old Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, the good stuff. So I had always loved wrestling, but had never thought about being a wrestler, really. So when that opportunity came, I thought, well, why not at least give it a shot? Who knows what might happen? So I had it set up for these brothers, there's Ron and Don Houck. I had it set up for them to introduce me to the promoter and, get me started training, blah, 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 blah. And just about time we were getting ready to get the ball rolling, they quit running shows. I don't know if they lost the lease to the building or what happened, but they quit running shows in Galax, and I was SOL. So that was like 1987. And 1989, I got my first television job in Roanoke, and I moved to Roanoke. And I'm there, and I knew that the group was called American Championship Wrestling. I knew that they had TV on the Fox station in Roanoke, and that they were based out of Roanoke. And so when I moved to Roanoke, I just started combing the newspapers and advertisements and stuff like that, and waited to find out when they were going to run shows. And I would go to the shows, and by this time, I knew which one of them was the promoter, so I knew who I needed to talk to about, finding out where I could get trained and everything. And I would go to the shows, I'd buy a ticket, I'd go in and watch the shows, and when the shows were over with, I'd stay inside the auditorium, and people would be breaking down the ring, and first one thing and another, and I'd wait for the wrestlers to exit and start leaving the building and everything, and I knew which one the promoter was. And I would just walk up to him and I would say, hello, my name's Johnny. I would love to be a wrestler. Could you please, help me get started with training, or send me to somebody who could get me started training or anything like that. I really want to be a wrestler. And he just looked me dead in the eye and he goes, I don't need any new guys. And then he walked off. And I had no idea, so I went back and to square one and waited until I saw that he had another show, and I did the same thing. I bought the ticket, I watched the show, I waited for him to leave, and as he was leaving, I would go up and I would just remind him, I'd be like, hello, I spoke to you before. My name's Johnny. I'm still, interested. Maybe you don't need me, but do you know where I could get trained or any kind of stuff like that? I don't need any new guys. And I knew that I had to be persistent or quit. So I wanted to wrestle. So, and look, this was 1990 in Roanoke, Virginia. As I speak right now in Charleston, West Virginia in 2020, there's like a dozen promotions just here within like a couple of hours drive. In 1990 in Roanoke, Virginia, American Championship Wrestling was the only place to wrestle. I knew of no other. This is pre-internet. This is pre-cell phone. This is pre Jimmy Valiant's camp. So I know of nowhere else. So I've got to get on here, or I feel like I'm not going to get on anywhere because I don't know of anywhere else to go. So I keep showing up. I keep at it. Finally, one night, one of the other wrestlers looks at him and says, Mike, would you please train this guy? Because if you don't, he's never going to quit coming here and doing this. And I looked him dead in the eye and I said, no, sir. I said, I'm coming here every time you run a show. And he took out a pen and a piece of paper and he wrote down his address. And he said, be here Sunday afternoon and have X amount of dollars and I'll train you. And that's how I got started.